We are live.
Good evening. It's Monday, March 25, 2019. This is a meeting of the Council Rock School District Board of School Directors Policy Committee. I'm chairing the meeting. I'm one of the board directors, and I had a little dental work earlier, so I sound a little odd. That's all. We have one board member on the phone with us right now, Ed Solomon. Thank you, Ed.
Good evening, everyone.
And we'll just go around the table real quick, and everybody can introduce themselves.
Miriam Key, School Board.
Christine Marcel, School Board.
Robert Frazier, Superintendent.
Bill Stone, Director of Business Administration.
Dean Taylor, Director of HR.
Matt Frederickson, Director of IT.
Thank you. The agenda and all the policies are posted on our website, both the existing policies and proposed new policies or revised policies. They're on there now and they will remain. So we'll start with the very first one. Policy number 340, responsibility for student welfare. Mrs. Taylor, please.
Okay. On this policy, there is one small addition, and it is midway through, where we see employees may not transport students in a personal vehicle except when specifically permitted by the superintendent or designee. And that is the only change that I'm recommending. That's akin to other districts in our area that have adopted this new policy and have that small change. Otherwise, it looks good.
And I'm sorry, I was in the middle of flipping through. That is to add the clause that the superintendent is required to authorize it?
Or designate.
Or designate, yes.
Prior it had said unless permitted by board policy. This refines that ever so slightly.
Great. All right, Ed, if you have no objections, we will
No objection.
move this forward to the full board with our recommendation for approval. This is 341, benefits for part-time employees.
Okay, there is one suggested change at the very bottom in red. This is purely a suggestion. The language is present in one or two districts in the area, and it basically just offers some extra protection that should we offer benefits that are not specifically spelled out in the CBA, that should you not meet a minimum hour requirement, then you would not receive that benefit. It is probably something that we would be able to carry out without the language, but the language is just an added layer of protection.
Thank you. Anyone? Any objections? Hearing none, we will move it on to the full board. 342 is jury duty.
This is another very brief, straightforward policy. Two very minor changes. We had, if you are notified of jury duty, to inform the superintendent, and actually our process now is your immediate supervisor. So I made that adjustment, and the paycheck that you receive at jury duty is given over to the district. So I made a small adjustment there as well.
Great. Anyone?
Looks good.
All right, we'll move that on to the full board. 343 is paid holidays.
This is another very short, straightforward policy. One addition just added the employee group professional.
Okay. Anyone? Ed? We'll move it on.
Sounds good, thank you.
Great. We'll move it on to the full board. 347.
337 is a new policy that was put forward by PSBA, and it is a policy that we do follow, even though we have not had one to this point. And it's very comprehensive. It meets all of the requirements of what happens when an employee is injured at work and they'd like to come back to work, but perhaps they're not fully recovered. So I don't have any changes to this. I think it is sound and comprehensive and ready to go.
So this language was recommended to us by PSBA.
It's a new policy. It has not existed in the past.
Got it. And for anyone new to this process, we have engaged PSBA. It's been about 2.5 years. For a very reasonable fee to help us review all of our policies, and we're making great progress on it. They recommend changes and additions and new policies. So thank you for this, Mrs. Taylor. We'll move this one on. Well, this one's a little detailed. Does anybody have any questions?
I do. Question about the district staff responsible for the transitional return to work program, and that they'll receive periodic training. Who would that be? Would that be you?
Myself and my benefits specialist, Kate Carroll, and we do have training from time to time. She works very closely with injured workers along the way to recovery and return to work, and coordinates all of those things with the schools, especially if we can try to return someone with some accommodations.
Mm-hmm. And your training situation is sufficient?
I think so, yes.
Good. Ed?
Good, thank you.
We'll move 347 on to the full board with our recommendation for approval. 348 is titled Unlawful Harassment, and it's a pretty detailed policy.
As we look at unlawful harassment, I do want to share that I had this policy reviewed by Eastford and Gray, specifically by Joanne Sumners, who had done so much work with us on policy 104, wanting to make sure that we were consistent with that policy and that this was fully vetted through Eastford and Gray. So you'll notice there is a lot of red throughout the policy. Language changes to make sure that we're including just some small refinements. And you'll notice right at the top where we've added not only those that have been harassed or believe they have been harassed, but someone who may have witnessed harassment is also included in this policy. We also made sure that we have the preventative language in there regarding training. We included language about retaliation. A little further down, you'll notice that it's a small refinement, but I think a good one, where we talk about what is harassment. Instead of saying shall consist of, is defined as. And then we go on to be very explicit about who the compliance officer is, how the compliance officer may be contacted. And then as we drill deeper down, a lot like policy 104, you begin to see the step-by-steps that a person who believes they've been harassed or who has witnessed harassment may take to file a complaint. This outlines the investigative process, the report that's required, the time frame to be done, actions that may be taken, as well as the appeal procedure.
I read this closely, particularly the new policy. I'm trying to see, is the section on training new as well? The language about
Where is that, sir?
maybe I'm thinking of something else.
That is going to be how to recess training in a different
Right. But
policy.
the question about harassment training is still a very good question, because we do train all of our new staff are trained within their first year of employment. They have 2 modules of training they complete, one for sexual harassment, the other for general harassment, and our employees are trained every 2 years. So it is a good question, although this policy,
Oh yeah, it's in the middle of under delegation of responsibility. It says the administration shall be responsible to provide training for students and district employees regarding unlawful harassment, which jumped out at me, and I think that's good, and I think it's necessary. And you were saying that all new employees and then,
So all new employees are trained. They have 2 modules, a general harassment module and a sexual harassment module. And our existing employees are trained every 2 years. This policy also has a requirement to be disseminated once a year to students, to staff. And that's important. So Joanne, as she and I were working together, pointed out that we have to make sure that we disseminate this every year.
So is that done now, or is that just going for the year?
I would think we would probably do it maybe beginning of next school year.
It hasn't been done every year previously.
that's a good step forward too.
As we've been working through all of these employee policies over the last several months, we do HR newsletters, and we have been putting, as a matter of business, policies have been approved. We take a moment and read the policies online, so letting employees know, because a lot of the changes are important for employees to be aware of.
And that newsletter is electronic with links right to the policy. Darn, that's great. Excellent. Removes excuses for not having reviewed it. Ed, any questions?
You know, I think the walk brought out, I think the policy looks great in that. Good work on that.
I just got a quick question. Are there other policies that like is similar or just has similar language that we would just want to like compare?
This is policy 104. It's so very similar to this that was why I had called these burning gray. Joanne Thomner had done ton of work on 104.
Okay.
She actually joined us at a meeting to present that, so she was the same attorney who
Oh, that's
reviewed
great. Okay,
it.
thank you.
And she personally came out that summer, that was 2 summers ago, I think it was. Not last summer, but the one prior. And she came to our retreat in August, just to personally go through her supervisor.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's excellent.
this is an area for personal expertise, and she's really eloquent and a great teacher when it comes to
She is
stuff.
fantastic.
All right, then we will move 348 forward to the full board with our recommendation for approval. 351 is drug and substance abuse.
Do not have any changes.
All at the top. No? Memory fails, okay. If there are no questions or comments, then we'll move this one forward as well to the full board. 806, child abuse.
I'm actually going to take that one. Over the period of the last couple of weeks, Mrs. Brooks attended at an IU meeting. They went over some changes to this policy. Well, they went over changes in the law that required changes in this policy, and she asked us to review it. Dr. Lambert reviewed it with Joanne Summer. Once again, she reviewed it. She made 3 very, very minor changes, and I don't remember whether I highlighted them with red or not, or I just made the changes.
There's a strikeout.
There we go.
Yeah, independent contractor.
I did strike them out. Well, there's one of them. They were very, really super minor. And what's interesting is there were changes to the policy that she had written before. So she changed her own policy. But that's okay.
Called continuous improvement.
There you go.
But they were very minor. But Joanne was happy with this version. So
Good, so it's gotten double scrutiny because we just revised it in 2016.
yes, sir.
Good, great. Questions, anyone? Comments? No, good, that's good. We'll move 806 child abuse onto the full board for its consideration. 610 is purchases subject to bid quotation. Mr. Stone?
Thank you, Mr. Tate.
This is also a fairly minor edit, in my opinion, off of what PSBA recommended. The policy didn't differentiate for bids that are either above or below the state's mandated threshold. So I added some language around, sometimes we would like to go out to bid for something that we're not required to go out to bid for, just in order to try to make sure that the price is best. So in those cases, we will solicit bids from vendors. We don't have to go through the formal advertising process. So we just struck out the language proposed by PSBA and set up 2 sentences to differentiate those purchases below versus those purchases above. We'll continue to follow the state law.
Great. Any comments, questions?
This will actually save us money, right?
Pardon?
This will actually save us money.
Not having advertisements.
That's awesome.
I mean, and it's also just, we're doing this already. We want to copy it.
Great, thank you. We'll move 610 on to the full board for consideration. 611 is purchases.
Yes, so this is covering purchases that are below the bid where we may not necessarily go through the activity of putting it out to bid or quote. This is some of the changes that you see here to reflect changes within the business department. There used to be a purchasing agent, and so you see lots of references to that particular position. That position does not exist in the so we've changed the language so that either the director of business administration, the assistant business administrator, or the superintendent would be allowed to authorize purchases. And then some of the strikeouts you see at the bottom there seem sort of unnecessary. They were, because our purchasing process is, the request is approved at the building level or the department level by an administrator and then comes to my office for final approval by somebody in my department. And under this policy, myself, Ms. Chloe, or Dr. Frazier, it doesn't make sense to then have another administrator in the central office approved after it's already been approved by either the CFO or the CEO. So we just decided that that should be restricted.
Particularly with the purchase that's already budgeted. Ed? We're good? We're good.
I'm good, like I said, yeah, we're good.
611, then we'll move forward to the full board for its consideration. 614 is payroll authorization.
I have no recommended edits off of what PSBA suggested. It's very similar to our current policy regarding payroll.
This is process. Great. Any questions or comments? None. Okay, good. We'll move 614 forward to full board with our recommendation. 616 is payment of bills.
So this is the changes recommended here are moving us toward our current practice, which is my role, the Director of Business Administration, approving the payment of bills in the course of business. Technically, if you asked Rob Cox, the board secretary, officially, upon action at the board meeting, approves the bills to be paid. But practicality, that's really happening out of my office. We're also making some changes to reflect the transition from a paper world to an electronic world. We needed to have flexibility in the old policy for a number of folks to be able to sign checks in the absence of the president and the vice president. But now that we have an electronic signature plate embedded within our system, the signatures are always there. It doesn't matter whether somebody is traveling or not present in the office to physically sign checks. They're electronically signed. So you see that we're striking out that the vice president may sign for the president. That's not because we don't want Mr. Biden, in this case, the vice president, to sign the checks. It's just the checks are pre-built, already signed. So we don't need to have as much flexibility around sound checks.
I remember the wonderful guy that service president sending a lot of documents.
Those are contracts.
Those are contracts.
So this is talking about every single physical check that you mail out. So if you've ever looked at your check register.
Oh, we weren't doing that anyway. We haven't been doing that for
We've
years.
never done that.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, this is
That's not what I was signing.
No, we're signing many other things, many other things. One other change that I would like to point out that's in addition to what PSBA recommended, just to clarify the use of the district sales tax exemption number, that is not allowed to be used by school-related organizations. So the difference is that a club is a school organization, okay? Falls under the umbrella of the school district. PTO is not a school organization or a booster club. Those need to have their own sales tax exemption. They can't piggyback off of the school district. So that's just to document that. That's something that we try to enforce, but it's always good to have it in policy.
Okay. Again, that's process and the changes are reflecting what our current practice is. Hearing no objections or questions, we'll move the 616 on to the full board with our recommendation. Approval 621 is local taxpayer bill of rights.
So this particular policy actually only covers the district's occupation assessment tax. This does not relate to real estate tax. And that's just a little quirk in the law. Real estate taxes are enabled under one particular section of the school code and are governed by lots of rules and regulations around when payments are due and when refunds can be accepted. The occupation assessment tax is governed by a different section of the school code, and it has not as many rules, and actually states that the taxing authority should develop policies around how to handle any disputes, appeals, things of that nature. So that's why we have to develop a local taxpayer bill of rights specifically for the occupation assessment tax. When the school district was levying a per capita tax, it would also apply to that tax. So you do see in the policy towards the top that which taxes it's eligible for. So if the district were to impose an amusements tax or admissions tax, it would also apply to that. Since we don't have that, that's really only talking about that one.
So a lot of this policy talked about, no, I guess it was in the administrative regulations. It spells out the appeal process and all that. That's in the AR.
It's actually spelled out now at the bottom of the policy. And what we basically copied it verbatim, so it resides in the administrative regulation and in the policy. And the reason that we did that was because if you read the language around the appeals process, those 4 points there are not steps. We don't need to do each of those. We have the option to do any one of those 4 as a way to resolve an appeal. So typically, number 2 is the one that we would utilize most commonly, which is review a decision by the board in executive session. As I understand it, that's the recommended manner in which we address appeals that Mr. Cox brings forward.
Yes.
So yeah, you see those additions there. Those are the options that the board would have in order to resolve tax appeals.
Yeah, I looked at the AR as well too, because, this links directly to the administrative regulation.
It does.
And I asked you just before we started the meeting if you had looked at the AR and said you had it.
So Matt, it's down at the bottom of the policy there. If you're able to look that up. So there are not two. So this is the document that's posted on our website, and if someone submits an appeal to the tax office, we're required to send out this very document which outlines the process. So scroll sort of slowly so I can see.
So we literally mail a hard copy to somebody who's appealing?
I don't know the answer to that question. I would presume that we utilize some electronic
Sure,
methods.
that'd be better.
Right, but I don't know for certain that we don't mail it, just as a matter of to make sure that folks receive it.
So we either email or mail it.
So there was just some changes, and I did have Mr. Cox review this, just some kind of wording cleanup. So that particular section on refunds was changed to read basically that you can either, taxpayers can request an extension of time in order to file the documents that might be requested. So in some cases, the school district has the right to appeal and to audit individuals' occupation assessment tax. So if we believe that for some reason that we should be collecting a greater tax from the individual, we could initiate an audit of that. And if we then request certain documents, the taxpayer could request an extension of time. So the reason that the language there on the screen was changed was because we may send them the notice of the appeal and then they may be granted an extension, and the language wasn't clear enough to later of whichever date is more appropriate. So we just wanted to make sure that was appropriate. Yeah.
Good.
And
Struck me as fairly clear to read.
then I think it's at the very end of that. And then here's the appeals process, which mirrors what's in there.
We do get appeals.
We do. We do. We do not initiate audits, at least not that I'm aware of. We do.
Ed, anything?
No, I'm good, Ed, thank you.
All right, we will move on to the full board, 621 local taxpayer bill. 22, this looks process. Gatsby, I've heard of it before.
Yes.
Gatsby Statement 34.
Yes. So if you want to hear a business manager get excited about something, you can talk to him or her about Gatsby. So that does take me back to my roots. So Gatsby 34 is this statement from which we have to develop all of our financial reporting to comply with all of the Gatsby standards. And so the original way that this policy was written, in my opinion, was a little bit too narrow. It really was only covering capital assets, so the buildings, the major improvements, those things. Gatsby 34 is far more all-encompassing around how we actually construct our financial statements. So you'll see some strikeouts and some additions around the process by which we put together the financial statements. Capital assets are obviously a very important component of the policy, and so there's still a lot of language around when we capitalize an asset and how we calculate depreciation, how we categorize them differently. But that is just a part of this. The main addition in the front of the policy is around how we will put together our financial statements. And no changes to the meat of the policy around how we're capitalizing assets. Just that little bit to make sure it's clear how we're handling it.
I never quite understood the rationale of the financial statement process, given that we're a school district, not a for-profit business. Very detailed, and it's mandated by the state, right?
I want to keep these other gentlemen out anyway, so perhaps you and I can have a conversation offline about my feelings about that.
Yeah, okay. If there are no questions or comments, then we'll move forward. policy 622 to the full board, and it leaves us with two more. 626, federal fiscal compliance. Say that, guys. Federal fiscal compliance.
So there are, this is a policy for which we have very little ability to deviate from. It's really driven out by some changes at the federal level around the expenditure of federal funds. And so the PSBA has developed this policy. You will see for probably every school district the very same policy because it is so regimented by what the federal government requires. So I don't have any recommendations to make any changes to the actual policy itself. And what, Matt, if you could roll down to the bottom, there are attachments to this particular policy which function similarly to administrative regulations. Again, these were drafted by the PSBA.
Do you want to look at any one in particular?
If you can open up just one, you don't need to just open up the first one. Demonstrate so if you look at the first paragraph under allowability determinations, the draft policy document that comes from PSBA has options for school districts to choose which individual within the school district will be responsible for carrying out the particular task. So when you look at these, when they came from PSBA, it said the superintendent, the director of business administration, the federal programs coordinator, or other. Mm-hmm. And we had to go through and select who actually did the work associated with that. So you'll see my name throughout a lot of the policy and a lot of the attachments, but occasionally mixed in there is Dr. Frazier as superintendent for, depending on the level of approval that needs to happen. So we did have to go through and just select what individual would actually carry out the work.
Interesting.
So you can't see where we chose who it would be because it's a little unwieldy to read. We consolidated to make it look.
Great.
Those four documents in there govern how we handle the expenditure of federal funds.
And if anybody's curious, we don't get a lot.
Correct. We do not. But we have a very robust policy around the expenditure of those.
Very good. Mary Ann had a question. Or is that in the next one?
No, under 626, the board designates the board treasurer as the district contact for federal program.
Yeah, right there in the middle, right there, that. Under,
Under
right, first line under
delegation,
delegation.
responsibility,
Yeah.
board treasurer.
Right now, that is Mrs. Chloe. So that to me would be an appropriate person. It was Mr. Reinhardt before that. So
That's great.
it's a sort of a dual role. So it's appropriate.
Thank you.
Okay. No other questions, then we'll move forward under 626 to the full board. Which leaves us with the final policy for tonight, I believe. 626.1.
So again, this was PSBA made some minor tweaks to the policy that had been in existence. I have no recommendations to make any further tweaks. This one is more specific around travel reimbursement when using federal funds. So just sort of an offshoot of that 626 policy.
Great, thank you. Ed, last chance.
No, I'm good, Ed, thank you.
Of course, you're welcome. Thanks for participating in the meeting. Do we have any comments or questions before we conclude? Thanks for participating, Ed. Thanks for participating, Mary Ann. Thank you, gentlemen, for your help.
Thank you.
And we are